This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
I have re-watched James Cameron's Avatar several times, and I am amazed by the quality of the footage each time. Considering that most of the picture is graphics, I admire it even more. I started watching the movie with high expectations, which I think were met, so the initial impression didn't change much after watching the movie. Most of all, as I said, I liked the unattainable graphical power of Avatar. As you know, the production used the techniques of camera shooting, editing, capturing faces, and visual effects, which amaze almost any viewer. I liked that the film has a deep meaning, not just an excellent visual component. The director touched on the resounding theme of human cruelty, showing what people are ready to do for profit. Given the deep plot, the eternal love line between the main characters seemed inappropriate, so I would say that the only thing I did not like was this moment in the plot. I think a strong attachment, or becoming part of a clan, would be enough. However, this, in turn, gives the film its brilliance and richness when everything, including emotions, is at its maximum. I also didn't like the cruelty of the Earthlings, which, unfortunately, is not cinematic fiction. Most likely, the fact that people are cruel upset me the most. However, justice always wins, as happened in the movie, so overall, I enjoyed the movie. There is a direct relationship between people's perception of each other and their relationships. How people perceive and evaluate each other depends on the images that they form about each other. Based on these images, people relate to each other and build interpersonal communication. If one person perceives another positively, he will have a positive attitude towards this person and act accordingly. If a person perceives another person negatively, then negative actions should be expected from him in relation to this person. The protagonist, a former military man, perceived him as a strong personality who could be trusted as an experienced commander at first contact with the colonel. It eventually led Sally to side with evil as he agreed to help Miles Quaritch. The leader understood that the main character was an essential link between scientists and the military, so he decided to use him. In turn, the colonel's perception of Sully as a former military man allowed him to manipulate Sully. He knew the trauma the hero received earlier weighed too much on him, a man who still wanted to fight for a good future. Thus, the background of both characters determines their perception of each other, ultimately influencing the plot's development. It is noteworthy that the manifested human psychology acts not only on the screen but in life, too. Interestingly, the film does not represent standard stereotypes, such as a precise distribution of responsibilities, that is, the preservation of gender roles. The film shows that excellent fighters can be women and military pilots. In addition, the scientific group is headed by a woman who treats the military with disdain. The film's director develops more specific themes, such as the Aboriginal stereotype, precisely the behavioral stereotype. People who have arrived from Earth consider themselves more developed, which has advantages. It also happens with developed and third world countries. Post-industrial states consider themselves in the right to carry out global changes in lagging states. Just like the people who arrived from Earth to Pandora, they ignore that they are surrounded by people who do not differ in their common moral values. The actors repeatedly use gestures and facial expressions throughout the film to show how they feel. But what is most surprising is the same gestures and facial expressions the animated characters did. We see that these creatures have the same feelings as us, and they correctly display them using nonverbal behavior. This film is filled with action. It means that they had to ensure that facial expressions and actions were correct. One can see that the movements of the characters look realistic. There is running and jumping. All this was done to reflect the actions of the person. Posture is essential here. These people from another world are scared and fighting for their lives. Their postures portray many basic emotions: fear, sadness, love, and others. The indigenous population of Pandora is one with nature, so the inhabitants of Nausicaa adopt a lot from it: gestures, facial expressions, and more. Residents often make many different sounds to establish contact with the world around them. They communicate with animals and trees and may also communicate with each other. The most important thing for them is to establish contact, which, in turn, is also connected with nature. They connect minds and the world around them. For this reason, Sully's act when he established a connection with Toruk, a dragon-like predator feared and honored by the Nausicaa, can be attributed to nonverbal communication to inspire trust and respect from the natives. He knew this animal was considered an essential part of their culture, and its subjugation equated with great power. Thus, the protagonist, nonverbally, asks the inhabitants to trust him and follow him. I think the realization of the mistake comes to him gradually and begins with the first meeting with Neytiri. The hero is struck by the beauty and harmony of Pandora's world and its connection. The more the hero learns about the peculiarities of the life of the indigenous people, the more he is imbued with their position and becomes part of them. As he learns from the Nausicaa, Jake respects the Omaticaya people and their customs more and more. He passes the test to tame the Ikran, a flying pterodactyl-like predator, and at the end of the training, Jake is initiated into the clan. Even though the realization of Jake's mistake did not come to him in full immediately, he did not make a sufficient attempt to prevent it in time. In this regard, I believe that he realized the magnitude of the disaster too late. By the time Jake began to act, the colonel and his army had already begun to destroy the Nausicaa. Although the protagonist sided with the people of Omaticaya during the battle, this did not bring an effective result. I would like to press pause at the moment when Jake began to enjoy life on Pandora. He could talk about his deal with Colonel Grace so that she could help him talk to the Nausicaa people because she had spent much more time among them, and they trusted her. Perhaps this would have avoided the victims that occurred in the film. I don't think Omaticaya's warning would have stopped Selfridge, the plan's administrator, from his idea, but it would have given him more time to develop an effective defense plan. That is what I would do, given the main character's background and the events in his life that took place on Pandora. This essay on Avatar, 2009, movie review and analysis was written and submitted by a student just like you. The Ivy Panda Samples database hosts thousands of works similar to this one, on various subjects. Visit ivypanda.com to find what you are looking for, free of charge.